All right, I'm going to tell you about a guy who was born in 1910. He's Robert Churchill. He was born in Germany. He was half Jewish and half Lutheran. And by the time he graduated college in 30 or so, he was very much anti-fascist and so he was targeted. And he escaped on a Danish passport thing. The Danish passport said Robert Hartman. So he became Robert S. Hartman. The thing that struck him the most is that the Nazis could organize people so well, they couldn't organize good. And so he was looking at the study and organization of good. The term at the time evolved called axiology, the study of good. He was a PhD in math, a PhD in the law, Aristotle, and a PhD in philosophy. And so he combined all of that, and he came up with a definition of good that nobody else had come up with before. Probably even to this day, the only definition of good is true. When something is good, if it has all the attributes required to fulfill its purpose. So the example is a chair. Right? It's got to have enough legs to be stable. It's got to have a seat about this high. It's got to have a back. No. It's not too many attributes to be a good chair. Now, when my wife had a business place, we were down at the orthopedist office, I noticed a different chair. It was much higher. It had a place to rest your feet, and it had arms. That was a good chair for an orthopedist. So, counting the attributes that different things required to be good, he came up with 3 levels of value. Systemic was the lowest level. It's either a 1 or a 0. The law is on books or it's not on books. I have a process, or I don't. I have a vision, or I don't. He called it systemic. The next level up, he called extrinsic. These are transactional things. These are things like a chair is extrinsic. And you can count them. Sometimes they have a lot of attributes, but you can still count them. Above that, he came up with a category called intrinsic. Intrinsic are things of the heart, the quality of life, the goodness of a person, infinite number of attributes. Just can't count them. It's probably a countable infinity, but it's still not countable in the system. And so organizing those, he came up with a hierarchy of value. Intrinsic is greater than extrinsic, is greater than systemic. And then he came up with the whole differentiation between the worldview and the self-view. And he developed an assessment that assessed a person's hierarchy of value compared to the natural or the mathematical hierarchy of value. And with that hierarchy, you can start to understand the thinking capacity that a given person has. It became known as the Hartman value profile and it had a lot of application. But what he did was he accumulated his 36 measures into 6 measures, 3 external and 3 internal, plus some indication of whether you were leaning this way or that way, call that bias. And for many, many, many years, that became a method of assessing thinking capacity. So in the external world, he accumulated it into empathy, practical thinking, and systems judgment. In the internal world, he had self-esteem, self-belief, role awareness, and self-direction. And for years and years and years, that became a very useful coaching tool. He wrote a book, and I'm not going to tell you a lot of references, but if you want to know it, talk to me later, I'll tell you what he wrote lots of books. One of them is easy to read, called Freedom to Live. You can find it and get a little sense of it. Now, as people use the Hartman value profile, a number of other gentlemen around the turn of this century, around 2000, found a way to use all 36 measurements and understand the thinking capacities of an individual. And that was super valuable because now I don't have to accumulate them into things like empathy. Right? What does that mean? What do I do with that? What do I do? And things, and I'll read you a couple of them. They gave them labels like caring about others. Sorry, it's tighter than I thought. And valuing yourself, being at peace, seeking common ground. And those are indicators of the thinking capacity. And so when you have perfect alignment with an alcoholic partner, you're going to have pretty crystal clear thinking in that, and that's a powerful way to if you're not aligned, if you're off of the value system, you have a risky way of thinking, and not to say it's always bad, but it can be more risky than others. And so that became a foundation of a coaching method. It's called axiogenics, and it's probably the most powerful coaching method I've ever come across. Now, hang on just a minute, hang on. That may or may not have anything to do with Deming, but I think it does. But I just don't know how to. So I had a quick question. So
how do you spell that? Estrogen? What did you say?
Axiogenics.
Exogenics.
Axiogenics. Axiogenics. I'm not good at spelling it without looking at the paper. Anyway.
So
Sorry.
Okay.
Come back. Axiogenics. AXIOGENICS. There's a website.
Can you say that using the microphone?
Oh, okay.
That would.
You can always talk to me later, I'll tell you. Okay, it's axiogenics. AXIOGENICS.
Again?
AXIOGENICS. Axiogenics.
My phone is the book that you mentioned.
The War Department book is Freedom to Live. And that's kind of a collection of essays, and it's kind of at my level. There's a whole lot of books he wrote that I've tried to read. And I'll just leave it at that. They're very, very intense PhD level studies, textbooks, and you don't read them for fun, you read them to dive into it. The Axiogenics is a really neat book called Answering the Central Question, and that's by Harvey Shulk and Peter Demarest. Answering the Central Question. It's a much easier to read book than it is in practicality. So what happens is that probably 85+% of our thinking is subconscious, our decisions. Oh, my head itch. I scratched it. I made a decision, never entered my conscious thought. Every now and then it does. I shouldn't scratch my head so much, but most of the time I just do it. Those are usually dominated by some aspect of a bias or sometimes it's an asset. But for the most part, it's a bias. It's like not where you're not aligned. Why is that? Typically, most people have more biases than they have assets. And, that's just because we're survival creatures and we react to threats in some way that keeps us alive. Mostly it's ego threats now, it's not so much physical threats, but yeah. So it turns out that you can learn to recognize when you're about to go into a risky way of thinking, and you can activate a more safe way of thinking. And so then you can pick the situations, guess what, they usually repeat for us, they usually say the dumb thing, why did I do that again? And so that's the power of that methodology. Now, yeah, what I say is you can learn to use your best thinking when it matters most. And I just want to conclude with one thing. First of all, if you want to know more about this, just ask me to do more. I can show you how the assessment works. It's the weirdest assessment you've ever seen. You cannot cheat on it. Like if you do a Myers-Briggs or if you do a DISC, you can eventually learn how to come out whatever you want to come out. Can't on this one, unless you memorize the list of words, which you really shouldn't do. And I'll conclude by saying it's like Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Thanks.
So the online people wanted to know your name and how they could reach you if they wanted to.
Okay. Well, my name is Mike Myers. And you're not going to find me by Googling because there's too many of us. Let's see. What's the best way? An email? You want an email? Okay, so it's mike@johnsonandmyers.com. Johnson is the standard JOHNSON, and AND written out, MYERS. Is that good?